This part of Attack on Titan is one of the best stretches of the entire story. So in this video, I'll be going over how the manga and the anime were able to showcase that greatness and convey the messages that Isyama wanted to give to us. So this raises the questions: why was this part special? And did the anime do it justice? The reason I was saying this is the best stretch is because it was basically the only part where we get to see Eren's mentality and mindset before the end of the story, and how he came to the conclusion of activating the rumbling. We see how he was basically a slave to the Attack Titan and his destiny. He wasn't really free. So it's incredibly important for Isyama and the anime to make Eren's mentality going into this very clear. And as you know, 131 wasn't the only thing that was adapted in this episode. This episode is also the point where we get to see the level of motivation that Armin and the other guys had. At this point in the manga, we needed to understand the motivation and the extent of that motivation for every participant in the finale. There was no room for error, because if they were to mess up, the ending just wouldn't land. Each medium needed to make use of every advantage that the medium offers to best convey Isyama's vision. And to do that, there were some changes that needed to happen in the anime, just like there were things that they had to keep the exact same because it's super essential to convey Isyama's message. The scene that sticks out to me a ton that was shared between the anime and manga and was also put in the exact same spot for both is the Armin and Annie scene. The reason it's so important and the placement can't be changed is because Isyama wanted to show a contrast to the beginning of the chapter. He wanted to showcase that both sides are still thinking of a future. Both sides never wanted this to happen, and both sides are affected negatively by what Eren is doing. We needed it right after the extreme details that we saw in the rumbling and the dreams that were crushed. This leads to Isyama's message being conveyed in the best way possible. This is something that both the anime and manga did to perfection, and it was pretty much exactly the same, just in different mediums. But like I said earlier, there were some changes that needed to happen. Most of these changes came in the arrangement of the scenes. An example that comes to mind is the rumbling. In the manga, it needed to be paced out through the entirety of the chapter. On the other hand, because the episode was covering multiple chapters, they decided that splitting the episode into multiple sections. The first one is fully focused on Eren's perspective and his actions, and the second section was focused on the Survey Corps and their commitment to stopping Eren. And in the final section, it was the conclusion of everything, the lead up to the finale. There were also some additional scenes and details that the anime put in. For example, the very first scene of the episode, the one that started the whole show. And I think its addition here was an amazing choice, because it lets the viewers tie things together more, and it makes it more clear and easier to understand Eren in this part of the story. The anime also added a ton more details to the rumbling, and they added more scenes to that. But they also removed the scene that was very impactful, the baby scene, if you read the manga. I'm not really going to get into it here because it could still be adapted in the next part. Now let's look at how the manga did things. The first thing I want to talk about is the art style and the panel layout of this chapter. The manga uses a very realistic and detailed style to show the scenes of destruction and death caused by the wall titans. The panels are often large and wide, showing the scale and scope of the disaster. The manga also uses a lot of contrast between light and dark, creating a sense of dread and despair. For example, in this panel, we see Ramsey looking at the sky as he sees Eren's titans looming over him. The sky is very bright and clear, and the titans are very dark and ominous, creating a stark contrast between the freedom that he's imagining and the reality of his actions. Another way that Isyama used the manga medium to his advantage was by using the panel structures in a full page. You can see it when Eren was talking to Ramsey. The manga blended the rumbling and that scene together by putting the panels of both scenes in the same page and dipping in and out of each one. This was done to show Eren's real thoughts and feelings of his actions. This kind of leads me to another advantage that the manga had over the anime, since this is a very emotionally rich section in the story, and we see those emotions a lot on the characters. Like with the scene that I was talking about, Isyama was able to showcase the emotions and feelings and thoughts of the characters in their faces so well. The facial expressions and the emotions were just shown a lot more in the manga, and that's actually an inherent advantage of manga in general, because it's a still medium. So the mangaka are able to go all out in the panels to show the full extent of emotions on the characters' faces. Moving on to the anime, like I mentioned earlier, they added some original scenes and dialogue to flesh out the characters and the plot more, and they also showed more of the rumbling in a more compact way, and it was put at the very beginning of the episode, so that sets up the whole atmosphere of the entire episode coming forward. Something that's a great advantage for the medium of anime is the sound design. For example, we can hear the rumbling of the wall titans as they crush everything in their path, and we could also still hear them in the scenes that they weren't present on screen. An amazing scene to show showcase the greatness of the sound design in this episode was when Armin and the others were preparing to jump off the plane. This was the beginning of the finale, the final stage of the story, and the anime needed to display that. They mainly used sound design to showcase that. For our characters, there is no coming back from this. It's all or nothing. This is what their decisions and their choices for the entirety of season 4 led to. They have this massive task that they don't even know if they can accomplish. And without a single piece of dialogue, the anime was able to portray all the feelings of anxiety, worry, fear, and regret that they had. They did that by having intense fighting music playing until Armin opened the airplane door. Then all we hear is the screeching noise of the wind. Then the camera focuses on Armin, the face of our protagonists. He stood there for a second, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then he jumped. This was something that only the anime could do, and they perfected it. It's very obvious that anime has some inherent characteristics that can be utilized and pushed to a really high point, even besides sound and sound design. There are two things that I want to talk about. First is the use of color in setting the tone and atmosphere. The example that I want to talk about that masterfully used color was the rumbling. They put a layer of slight redness to most of the rumbling scenes. Doing this gives the destruction that is going on a much darker feel and a more eerie vibe. And as you know, red is the color of rage and anger, so they use that because it conveys the rage and anger that was built up throughout the whole history of the entire conflict. The rage of Eren himself, and of course the people that are dying because of the rumbling. The second thing I want to talk about is the animation itself and how they used it very well to give a better vibe than the manga did. A tiny example of that is right after Armin and the others jumped off the plane. If you look carefully, you can see that when Reiner was using the ODM gear, he was unsteady and moving frantically compared to the rest of them. And that's because the ODM gear is different from the one that he was used to from before. And also because he was rusty since it's been so long since he last used it. This extremely minor detail wasn't done at all in the manga because it can't be. It was fully an anime addition. Overall, I think the anime did an amazing job setting up the finale, and they also made the manga's intentions more clear for people who didn't notice some stuff in the manga. And that's especially with Eren's character. In my opinion, the best way to get the Attack on Titan feel and understanding of the story is to both read the manga and watch the anime, because they support each other into making Isyama's message much more clear. But if you want to see an anime adaptation that fully surpassed its source material, you can watch this video right here to watch how Oshinoko did that.